control escapes. We're gonna work like a very basic escape today. But the movement I honestly just learned recently, and I can't believe I just learned it. So we're all gonna learn it again today. And then yeah, we'll see maybe one more like advanced or kind of very specific escape depending on the grips of my partner too if we get through this first one. But I really want to emphasize just like the leg work of this next one. And it's really powerful when someone's putting a lot of cross face pressure and you feel like you can't really disconnect the upper body. We can focus a little bit more on the legs. Very similar to what we've done in flat and half guard in previous weeks. So I think it'll tie in pretty well with what we've already been doing. Andre, how you see? So let's start here in side control. Our standard frames that we've been talking about. I always want my arms in tight, never overextending. My right forearm is going to be wedged into Andre's hip. My left forearm is going to be under the neck here, and my right knee again connected to Andre's hip. So I have a good sensitivity of like what he's doing, where he's going to move, and I can stay a little bit safer this way. I'm going to create a little bit of space by doing my hip escapes. From just watching some of us do the specifics last week and on the weekend and stuff, one mistake or problem I think we're all having is initiating our escapes is going to be very hard if Andre's doing a good job of like turning me this way and I'm not proactively like doing little hip escapes to stay on my right side. So even when I find myself in side control, I maintain my frames, but I try and keep this angle. See how my left shoulder's kind of off the floor and I'm more on my right hip? This is already going to set me off into a better position to set up my escape. So I'm still going to start kind of the same way as always. I'm going to do a couple of hip escapes, smaller ones, not these big, powerful bridges and hip escapes, just so that I can try and get a nice angle with my knee line. I'm thinking about actively getting my knee to the floor, but my heel to the ceiling when I hip escape. Okay, so as I do my little hip escapes, I'm doing this. See the angle of my heel is kind of up to the ceiling, and my knee this way goes actually down to the floor. All I'm trying to do is actually get my knee under Andre's thigh. Okay, so initially I go heel to the ceiling, knee to the floor, but then I'm going to drop my leg flat. Okay, now I'm actually going to use my feet on the floor to lift my knee to the ceiling. See how that drags him into my half guard. Okay, now I don't have the leg locked yet, so as I'm doing this, you can secure with your left leg until you have the timing to switch to your right. But ultimately, I'm just trying to get half guard. Okay, so I didn't need to move his upper body. He can still have a very strong cross face for this to happen. Now I'm going to do literally the exact same movement, but with the other knee. So if I need to, I do a couple more hip escapes to get to my right side, use my elbow to open his thigh, and I get my knee again, wedged to his hip. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing. My foot goes to the floor, my knee goes to the ceiling here. Okay, ideally I'd like to move him. If not, I might have to do one more hip escape to free my foot and lock the guard. And that way you can see when we end, Andre still has his cross face, right? But now it's not really going to help him. If anything, this is going to hinder him. I can start like isolating and attacking the shoulder and the arm here. So another angle. Even if we're not like escaping a lot after practicing this, at least if we position ourselves with ourselves on a right hip, you're at least probably not going to get mounted and you'll be a little bit more safe and the person won't be able to continue their progression. So I have good frames, knee in the hip. I'm always doing a bunch of small hip escapes to kind of stay on this angle. Eventually I'm looking for my hip escape to get my heel to the ceiling, knee to the floor. And again, pay a lot of attention to the leg work. I'm going to drop my leg flat to the floor and I use my knee like up to the ceiling here. As I do that, it brings his leg into the half guard. Okay, he could still be very tight. With our escape that we normally see, we usually create upper body separation, but it's not always possible. If he's really strong, really tight here, I just focus on the leg work. And now we're in flat half. We've already dealt with this last week. So same thing, if I need to alleviate shoulder pressure, I can do that. I'll hip escape out again, use my elbow to open up the thigh, and then I wedge my knee inside again. And now foot on the floor, knee pushing him to the ceiling, here like this. Okay, if I still can't get my foot out here, all I need to do is one more hip escape, and the foot will come free, and I can lock my closed guard. Okay, so, sorry, without Andre, the movement I just want to emphasize is like when I get my knee inside, I put it flat, I'm doing this. Such a weird little movement, but leg flat and my knee going to the ceiling is going to drag his leg into the half guard, okay? Such a basic thing, but if I'm being honest, I also just learned this recently. So we're here, little hip escapes, get to my side, my leg goes inside, and I put it flat to the floor here. What's going to help you get the knee inside, again, is the heel going up to the ceiling. That's going to create a nice angle for my knee to wedge inside, and then I put my knee flat to the floor. If you could, I would even use this leg to step over if I need to, but see here, I can't really reach his leg, still not necessary. So I can use my knee again to lift his thigh, hook the half guard. hip escape, open the knee, my knee wedges into the hip, and same movement. I'm using my knee to like lift Andre. You could even use your elbow to the floor and try and turn this into like a sweep, completely turning him here to butterfly. But at the very least, I can free my leg and close the guard, okay? So I'm pretty much doing the same movement twice. Elbow escape, foot to the floor, lift. Elbow escape, knee to the floor, lift. And that's gonna help us shimmy from side control all the way to post guard. All right, 1, 2. A lot of cross face pressure. Let's get you on your back. You're gonna do it for us here. Now that might change like mid-roll specific, and I think the tricky part about, well, I mean, there's a lot of tricky things about jiu-jitsu, but recognizing like which technique to do in the moment depending on your partner's reaction. I've said this a couple times, but jiu-jitsu is very unforgiving that you might do the right thing at the wrong time and it doesn't work anymore, okay? So we really need to build the ability to read our partner and what they're doing and which technique makes the most sense depending on their reaction. Okay, so what I mean by that is maybe Andre does a really good job of catching me into that half guard, and maybe he even frees his knee into my hip here. But if I just sprawl my weight back and kind of release the cross-face pressure, if he goes to tip me, like it's not gonna happen. And you're gonna think, oh, Mosey's lying to me, his techniques suck. Like, but in this moment, there's no upper body connection here. Like I don't have my cross-face anymore. Even if I'm just holding this, Andre probably could like press me away with his arms, hip escape, and get his knee shield in, and replace another way. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It's not like a universal technique that's always gonna work. You have to read your partner's reaction, okay? Now, in saying that, side control can be fairly difficult because the direction I switch my hips or the different grips I have will change the escape that we should use. So a very, kind of, not necessarily super common, I prefer to hold side control like this, but this will kind of shut down most escapes we've seen. If we're in side control here, and I just swim my right arm from his hip here to this side of his hip, every escape we've seen this week is kind of useless, okay? Because the idea of him hip escaping is to get his knee inside. How can he get his knee inside? My arm's blocking that leg. So if your partner literally switches just from this hip to this hip, everything we've seen this week is kind of negated, okay? So we're gonna look at a very specific reversal or replacement if the person has these particular grips. They might hold your hand, they might put the hand to the floor, but the idea is this right arm is blocking his knee. You can see how there's no way that knee is gonna get between my hip anymore, okay? So it's very specific, but I think it's still important to know because people will switch the grip like this. I'll do this all the time. I really like this same side grip control. So we have to, again, build the recognition of the grips have changed, so our escape has to change as well, okay? So we can start in our standard side control. It might be that you're doing such a good job of getting your knee in that he doesn't like it. He blocks it here. Okay, now all your escapes are out the window. So my right hand here is gonna actually switch to under his shoulder. So I can use a bit of a press, but I'm also gonna turn to my side here like this. I'm trying to connect my elbow and knee, but it's not gonna happen right away. So I try, but his shoulder blocks me. So we're gonna do like a reverse hip escape. So I'm almost gonna like run away from Andre. It's gonna feel very counterintuitive and weird, but I'm gonna use my toes to the floor. I'm doing this as many times as I need to. Here, until I feel my knee is under his shoulder. If you posture up for us, Andre. I now have a wall off. Okay, it's not the same angle we normally want, but from here my hands were already by the shoulder, so now I can press away enough to reloop my foot to the hip and rebuild. Okay, or sorry, foot to the shoulder first, then I get my foot to the hip and square up with him. This is maybe like one of my favorite escapes, but again, it only would do it if Andre moves his arm exactly to this side to block my knee here. So now all my escapes don't really work in this moment. So I'm gonna switch my grip here, turn away, use my toes on the floor. I'm scooting my butt towards my foot. 1, 2, 3. So I can get my elbow and knee connection. Then I can press, reloop my foot to the shoulder, and the tension of this is gonna help me bring my hip back in so my foot goes to his hip and double hook. Okay. You can ask your partner to put like a little bit more pressure if you want, and then you add like more rotation. So it doesn't have to be 1 or 2. Sometimes it's like 3 or 4, just to get that elbow and knee connected underneath his far shoulder. So again, I'm here, I free my arm, I turn away. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now I feel I have that wall off, I press away, reloop my foot to the shoulder. And then here I'm already safe. I already know I have the guard back, which is about building to a guard that you prefer. So I can press away, foot to the hip, maybe I look to like a collar and sleeve, or like a lasso scenario here, okay? But without Andre, the movement is this. I forcibly turn myself away from my partner. This is the only time I really turn away from my partner in side control. But those grip warrant this reaction. Toes, butt, toes, butt. Each time I'm bringing myself flatter and flatter and flatter until I can get here. And I'm still emphasizing that heel to the ceiling so that my knee goes super low. That way I can get underneath his shoulder. The elbow and knee are connected. And then here he's gonna be kind of on a diagonal above me, so I'll have to press, reloop, and replace my hands with my foot. One more time here. So I have my standard frames. Okay, I feel how he's beating me here. So I turn, get my arm. 1, 2, 3, 4. Press, reloop, foot to the hip, re-guard. All right, let's try this, guys. 1, 2.